What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
The car called Cee'd appeared in the lineup of Kia in 2006. The first generation of the model received the factory code ED, and it was not accidental. Later these letters were included in the name of the model, which became a derivative of the abbreviation from the words Community of Europe and European Design, Community of Europe and European Design. The model was indeed fully developed in the European design and engineering centers of the company and was intended to replace the not too successful Cerato in the European markets. But we are interested in the second generation of the model with the factory code JD, presented at the Geneva Salon 2012. The novelty was built on the then newest Hyundai Kia J5 platform and received a new design, developed under the guidance of Peter Schreier, and very rich in modern equipment, the list of which included swiveling xenon headlights, panoramic roof, heated steering wheel and auto parking. Technically, Cee'd of the second generation became a product of evolutionary development of the first one. Wheelbase and schemes of suspensions remained similar to the predecessor. In front, McPherson struts, rear suspension, independent. Multi-lever, 3 transverse and 1 longitudinal lever on each side. It should be noted that all these improvements led to a noticeable price increase, and the Cee'd JD has practically gone beyond the budget segment. The buyers were offered a lineup of 3 bodies: 3-door hatchback Pro Cee'd, 5-door hatchback and station wagon Cee'd SW. SW can be deciphered both as station wagon and sport wagon. As in the case of the Cee'd ED, production of the model for the Russian market was organized at the plant of Toda in Kaliningrad. But the engine lineup for Russia did not include a number of units, in particular, all diesels. The base engine was a 1.4-liter Gamma G4 FA with an output of 100 horsepower. It was combined with a 6-speed manual transmission. More expensive modifications were equipped with an atmospheric Gamma 1.6 MPI with an index G4FG, 130 horsepower, which was paired with a 6-speed hydro-mechanical automatic A6 MF1 or the same 6-speed manual. In 2015, the car underwent a restyling, which only slightly touched the exterior and interior design. But it was with the restyling that the car received a number of new options, and most importantly, the range of engines was supplemented by a 135 horsepower G4 FD motor with direct injection GDI volume, also 1.6 liters. It was paired with a non-alternative 6-speed dual-clutch DCT robot, and it is about restyled cars that we will talk. In 2018, the third generation of the model was born, the assembly of which was also mastered at Toda. The apostrophe disappeared from the model name. The car became known simply as Cee'd, and the Cee'd JD migrated to the secondary market. It should be noted that its prices are kept at a fairly high level. Even for versions with 1.4-liter engine, well worked in a cab and ran 350 to 450,000 kilometers, ask 550 to 600,000 rubles, and for relatively fresh copies with 135 horsepower engine and a robot, in rich configurations and with relatively small, less than 100,000 mileage, sellers want 1.3 to 1.7 million rubles. Someone will say, 1.5 million, or even $1 million for a Korean Golf class. That's insanely expensive. It does not drive, according to rumors. But if you carefully study and comprehend what the owners write in their reviews, it turns out that such a purchase to date can be quite meaningful. There are cars that have hundreds of glaring flaws. They often break down and require from the owners constant attention and considerable financial investment. But all the same, owners of such cars gather in clubs and communities, organize regular meetings, discuss the most pressing ailments and opportunities to improve their cars, and on the internet amicably repel the attacks of other motorists who do not want to understand. The approach in the style of, all the same I will not abandon it, because it is good. And all because such cars give their owners unique emotions, whether it is delight at passing bends at extreme speed or joy after successful passing on the rickety forest tracks in the swampy forest. So, the hero of our story does not belong to such kind of cars. It cannot be called a turtle at all, but it does not give a special driving drive. It is not badly controlled, quite confidently keeps on a track, but does not provoke at all for furious assault of fast corners. Dynamic possibilities also do not give a reason to portray a pilot of highway races. So the owner's right in the internet, it steers and holds the road not badly, but it is scary to go faster than 145 km per hour on standard. Rubber, multi-lever suspension implies good controllability, but, alas, it is not about Cee'd, Rio and Solaris with a Bingother. Same way, there is no excitement in maneuvering. It has a lot of other advantages, which we will talk about below, but emotionality is not among these advantages. As the author of one of reviews wrote, Cee'd is a car for a common man, just a car in the literal sense of this word. It will not give you crazy emotions, but at the same time there are no problems with it. To be honest, I have not come across a single review in which the author would tell how he saw the Kia Cee'd and fell in love with the car at first sight. Nevertheless, in the overwhelming majority of reviews the exterior of the car is evaluated, if not enthusiastically, then at least very positively. The exterior of the car is one of the most successful in its class. In my humble opinion, Kia Cee'd II is one of the most beautiful cars available to the common man today. Appearance is always to taste and color, but as for me, Schreier from Bavarian Motors has done a great job. Indeed, in the appearance of the model one can feel the hand of a real master, and Peter Schreier is undoubtedly one of the most talented designers of our time. Both energetic 3-door Pro Cee'd and 5-door hatchback and station wagon look very harmoniously, and certainly there is not a single detail that would cause rejection. Yes, the model, perhaps, lacks some uniqueness and 100% recognizability. At best, it is immediately recognized as Kia, primarily due to the tiger nose, which was once invented by the same Schreier. Yes, such design can leave someone simply indifferent. But, as one of the owners rightly wrote in his review, the appearance, as for everyone on the lover who likes sharper angles and decisions, U to I-30, if soft transitions, this automobile is in the very point. And here is something else interesting to note. Many authors of reviews consider that the Cee'd SW station wagon looks more interesting than hatchbacks, including, due to the horizontal line of the upper part of taillights and smooth sill line. Not less curious and such fact, among owners of Cee'd there are a lot of representatives of the beautiful half of mankind, and many of them consider that, despite the smoothness of outlines, the appearance of the car is more masculine than feminine. But the male part of the driver's audience is not concerned with the issue of gender orientation of the model. Kia Cee'd is a modern car, and, like many modern cars, it cannot boast of high durability of paintwork. And the reason for this is the struggle for environmental protection, forcing to change the technology of culling and use water-soluble compositions. So the owners complain, paintwork is terrible. For 3 years there have been red marks on the trunk. The disadvantages are weak paintwork. The hood is quickly chipped by stones. Paintwork is not the best. The only consolation is that the body itself has no tendency to intensive corrosion, as well as the fact that in comparison with the previous generation the quality of painting has obviously improved. Paintwork has become better, and the car, if not beaten, does not rot. Paintwork, as well as on many today's cars of other brands of such class, is weak, but the body is well galvanized and does not rust at once. In addition to unstable exterior paintwork, owners complain about insufficient stability of some interior finishing materials. The artificial leather upholstery of seats will crack, the steering wheel and gear selector knob will quickly wear out and lose their marketable appearance. In fact, such disadvantages are not serious in any way, and they are mentioned by the authors of purely positive reviews. Approximately the same picture is observed with the assessment of headlights. On the one hand, owners like the fact that additional sections are switched on when turning, but on the other hand, they do not like the quality of light itself, specific optics. On the one hand, excellent illumination of turns, I got used to it instantly, pedestrians in the yard get scared. On the other hand, dipped beam is frankly weak, halogen headlights do not shine brightly enough, I had to buy bulbs of increased brightness. The owners cope with this problem in different ways. Someone simply puts more powerful bulbs, and someone installs xenon or LED sources. Kia has always been known for its richly equipped cars, and the Cee'd is no exception. Owners love the fact that even in the average configuration they got a lot of features, sometimes available only for cars of higher Class: when you get behind the wheel, it feels like you're in a spaceship. A lot of lacquer, chrome, comfortable leather steering wheel, color monitor, stereo with a large touchscreen. Koreans are good. It is necessary to try to put Parktronics, dual zone climate control, cruise control, limiter, manual shifting with paddles on the steering wheel, Bluetooths and other yes ports into the average configuration and leave the model in this price category. The FIFA 2018 version has pile carpets with a logo, an 8-inch stereo with navigation, a review camera, dual zone climate control, a bunch of cushions and heaters except for the windshield, a lot of gloss in the interior and no less chrome in the exterior. There are 4 automatic windows, 6 speakers, voice control, Bluetooth, heated steering wheel, front seats, 3-level, wiper zone, mirrors and, respectively, the rear window. And this is in the average comfort configuration. The owners especially like the set of warm options, a special praise for heated steering wheel, front seats, mirrors and the lower part of the glass, an extremely cool thing in winter. I turn on the engine from the alarm system 5 minutes before the exit, sit in the cabin with a hint of warmth, and by the time of leaving, the yard in the car is already comfortable, a pleasant bonus, winter options, heated steering wheel, seats, side mirrors and windshield in the area of wipers. Thus in many reviews it is possible to read that heating of a steering wheel pleases their authors most of all. By the way, in the budget segment in general and Class C in particular, this option first appeared in Kia Cee'd of the first generation. Some owners note that only the middle part of the seat back is heated, while the lower back remains cold. Of course, our man will always find a reason to grumble a little. For example, in many reviews you can see regret that only the wiper's resting zone is heated, not the windshield as a whole. Or to take, for example, multi-rule. It differs by abundance of control bodies brought out on it, 16 control elements, it is really solid. But someone thinks that it is too difficult to master such a set, they have crammed everything and not thought out. A lot of buttons, you forget what is where, you can't understand a damn thing. The most interesting thing is that we go to work 5 days a week in Kia, and I cannot remember how to turn on and adjust the cruise. I always get into it again by poking method. The owners evaluate the presence of rear view camera very positively, but complain that the lens quickly gets dirty, the rear camera gets dirty after 5 minutes of driving on a wet and dirty road and at a good speed, and in Moscow it is, in fact, the whole winter, plus fall, plus spring. And so, of course, it is very convenient. Few people mention the automatic parking function among the advantages. Firstly, it is not available in many packages, and secondly, many owners simply do not use it. Some of them because they consider it redundant, and some are not satisfied with the way it works. The parker does not always work. It does not park in too narrow and too big places, and in normal conditions it does not always work. Parallel parking is more or less normal, but perpendicular parking is not very good, because the car tries to press against one of the sides more strongly, and in the end you have to either interrupt parking or repark. There are complaints about the standard navigator. The standard navigator, immediately forget about it in the city, traffic jams. Can download only via Wi-Fi. For this purpose it is necessary to connect manually the network before each trip. Information on traffic jams downloads not immediately, but only after the 5th of October minutes. Someone grumbles that in the heat it would be good to have ventilation of seats. Someone complains that it would be possible to make a button of opening of a lock of a trunk from a salon, and so they have to jump out of the car constantly and to dirty hands, searching a key on the 5th, well, or the 3rd door. But all this can be considered as trifles, and there are much more positive reviews. In the mass of reviews the authors note soft plastic, which is used in the interior, perfectly readable dashboard with supervision, backlighting and 3 separate wells. And a lot of individual raves are devoted to the panoramic roof. I want to note the panoramic roof, with which the interior is very bright and feels spacious. And by the way, in winter the snow from the roof melts itself, physics, and in summer you can use the roof in 2 modes, ventilation and full opening. Children are absolutely delighted with it, and all the way are ready to sit and look at the sky without distracting you from driving. This configuration has a panoramic roof, and because of this, passengers in the back, even 3, are not cramped. It seems that there is a lot of space and light in the car. In general, it is the equipment that determines the overall impression left by the Kia Cee'd, very comfortable and convenient. Previously owned a new Mercedes C180, this car is just as good. Even for much less money, it has a lot more features. First of all, it should be noted that the Korean designers have done a serious work trying to get rid of quite sloppy work of the rear suspension of Cee'd, leaving the model as comfortable as possible. But suspension tuning is a kind of magic, and search of necessary balance requires not only knowledge, but also some flair. And if on hard surfaces Kia's suspension behaves quite well, at least, owners confidently put smoothness of running and controllability in the list of advantages of this model, then on soils, grader, and in general on our broken directions the picture changes. The complaints are endless. The suspension works like a typical Korean, you can feel it with all your spine, the suspension is bad. It is almost necessary to crawl over lying down, otherwise it punctures. It is a multi-lever at the back, and jumps worse than a beam if the trunk is empty. On winter bumps, especially in yards, you roll like in a route bus. At big irregularities the suspension quickly goes to breakdown. Behind the holes on the road and when passing bumps on the Cee'd now have to look more carefully, categorically do not like the smoothness of the ride. It is impossible to drive on a moderately broken road, it shakes. Fortunately, such breakdowns most often do not lead to catastrophic consequences. A separate plus for the suspension, it's unkillable. More than once I flew into potholes. It was heavily punctured, but no damage was found during routine inspections. But about the dynamic characteristics of the car there is no unity of views. Some authors of reviews assure that everything is in full order, it goes quite confidently on overtaking, even loaded. Many write that Kia Cee'd is a vegetable, does not go. So, it drives fast enough, without jerks, gains up to 100 km per hour, holds the road well at 150 km per hour. On the highway you are not nervous that you will not have time to overtake a truck, and this is not a small thing, +5 to the nervous system. But there are still more people who think that the power for dynamic driving is obviously not enough. The main problem is weak dynamics. 1.6-litre petrol motor is too weak for this car. Power for a city and a highway is enough, only if you go alone, but it is necessary to put 3 passengers, and on a highway the car dies. That is, to accelerate it is possible, but sharp overtaking it is not. Despite 130 h.p. dynamics is not enough, but for a city the ideal machine, dynamics, it is almost absent. A bunch of automatic +1.6 weight take. Their own authors of reviews write, even such emotional Philippics sound, I will tell so. If you want normal dynamic car, do not take Kia. Since the beginning of exploitation my nervous system has loosened up, my blood pressure is shaky, there appeared a turtle syndrome. Some voices appeared in my head, replace the car, replace the car. I used to think what kind of a teapot got on the road and does not drive, but now I understand, it is not him who is a teapot, it is his car that does not accelerate. At the same time, the main responsibility for the lack of dynamics the authors of reviews lay not so much on the motors as on the work of the boxes. Naturally, the DCT robot gets the most lumps. The engine and the box are not friendly at all, they live a separate life. Fast acceleration is not possible, it will not be possible to quickly gain speed on the highway. And also owners are very annoyed with the behavior of the robotized box in the city, especially in traffic jams. Regarding the behavior in traffic jams, Korean robot does not like them. The car wants to go faster, constantly tries to accelerate, hence the twitching. In this set, who does not know, there is a robot with 2 clutches. I have it does not dull on shifts, but if sharply from braking to start gas or from acceleration to the floor to brake, it pushes. However, it is, like, not a bug, but a feature of the robot. The box is dull, but it starts jerking only in traffic jams. When driving without strong long traffic jams it doesn't jerk. But the authors of reviews praise the 6-speed hydromechanics A6 MF1 for the clarity and smoothness of shifts. The box just on excellent. Smoothly and comfortably picks up speed, without jerks and twitches. The box behaves perfectly, does not kick. But in many reviews authors emphasize that both for more or less confident maneuvers in the city, and for overtaking on the highway, it is necessary to switch down with the help of steering wheel paddles or selector, and crank the engine up to 5,000 to 6,000 revolutions. As a result, in many reviews it is possible to read dreamy sighs, say, if Koreans would put their 2-litre 150 horsepower motor on Cee'd, and it would be not a car, but a song. In absolutely overwhelming majority of the authors of reviews are completely satisfied with the level of expenses on operation of restyled Kia Cee'd of the second generation. As you know, these costs are determined by the cost of scheduled routine maintenance, the likelihood and regularity of unscheduled repairs, especially serious and expensive ones, and fuel costs. Let's start with routine maintenance. The price of maintenance does not stand out from the general mass. Maintenance services were quite cheap, on average 9 to 11,000 rubles. The cost of maintenance is very comfortable. In terms of prices for maintenance, everything is very affordable compared to other cars of this class. Indeed, according to the owners, all TOs cost about 10,000 rubles plus or minus 1,000. In general, maintenance does not strain. Expenses for unscheduled repairs are directly related to the overall reliability, and we will talk about it separately. Here it is important to mention that Cee'd is a mass-market car, and the owners do not report any problems with finding necessary spare parts. Spare parts are quite affordable, and the need for them arises infrequently. Inexpensive spare parts, and I have not changed anything. For 70,000 only consumables, this model will serve for a very long time. In repair, even if something breaks, it is not range rover. The car is so simple that it can be repaired at any service for minimal money. To keep one pleasure, for 90,000 kilometers the car has not asked for exactly nothing. You just change the oil and filter and keep on driving. As for the consumption, there is no complete unanimity here, for a number of reasons. Firstly, the consumption itself depends on the driving style and the nature of operation, and secondly, its assessment is determined by a subjective approach to the figures obtained. Someone will consider the consumption of 9 to 10 L 100 km unacceptably high, and someone will be quite satisfied with it. In the case of the Cee'd, some owners are indignant. Gentlemen, my Volvo eats the same, 249 horsepower, 2 with more than a ton. In the city, 12 liters exactly. For 1.6 it is crazy consumption. BMW, 3.7 to 8 liters eat. Purely positive impressions, and except for the consumption, 12 liters. 100 km on average in the city, I do not know what to say negatively. Others write, consumption is pleasant, city 8, 2-10, 2, depending on how to drive, highway 6, 9-7, 6, again, depending on how to drive. City consumption is 11, on the highway plus or minus 8 liters. I think it is quite good. But in general, the bulk of owners evaluate the economy of their cars quite positively and cite significantly lower figures, especially consumption on the highway. In this case, it is especially interesting that owners of versions with hydromechanics and 130 horsepower G4 FG think so. It is no secret that robots and manual boxes, as a rule, provide lower consumption than classic automatics. The consumption is 7.7 L 100 km in the mixed cycle. On one tank you can get to St. Petersburg. The car burns comparatively little. I on the highway managed to 7.5 L 100 km. My wife once managed to make 5.7 L 100 km, if you believe the onboard computer, but I do not know how to do that. It is true that onboard computer readings should not be considered the truth in the last instance. The consumption according to the checks was 5.5 L 100 km on the highway, and the onboard computer showed 5.2. After 100,000 kilometers it increased to 6.2, and at 255,000 kilometers the consumption was 7.1 on the highway, and the BC showed 6.5. In general, you can be guided by the following figures. In case of a tandem of 135 horsepower engine with direct injection G4FD and DCT robot, 5-6 L 100 km on the highway, 8 to 9 liters in the city and 7 liters in mixed mode, and in case of 130 horsepower G4FG and hydromechanics, 6-7, 5 L 100 km on the highway, 5-10 liters in the city and about 8 liters in mixed mode. If to take into account that the automobile quite digests AI-92, though owners write that it increases risk of catalytic converter failure, this item of regular expenses turns out to be quite acceptable. And altogether it leads to the fact that Kia Cee'd loses its value very slowly, and it is quite realistic to sell the car in a year or two for almost the same price at which it was bought, and this also applies to purchases on the secondary market. After 3-5 years I sold it for almost the same price as I bought it. Of course, one of the main drawbacks of the second-generation Kia Cee'd owners consider the ground clearance too small for our conditions. Indeed, 150mm is not much. Moreover, the softness of the rear suspension springs leads to the fact that even a full tank makes the car squat at least a centimeter. And a full load reduces the clearance even more. Low, it would be better if it was at least 165, because a full tank of gasoline is a minus centimeter, if not more. In winter I constantly sit on my belly on the way to the dacha. As a result, the authors of reviews insist that Cee'd is a purely urban and road car, the model for city driving and suburbs with good roads. On a bumpy road clings with protection, clearance is 150mm. Country dwellers, don't even look at this car. Ground clearance is too small, so I often put my bottom on the ground, after which for a week cats scratch on my sole. However, you can also get your share of troubles in the city, especially in winter. It's hard to drive in winter, you can't help but sit on your belly. You have to carry a shovel, landing is a bit low for those places where snow is not cleared in winter. And curbs are waiting for the driver of the Cee'd all the year round. I once ripped out the front bumper on a high curb. I drove out of a crowded place, looked carefully, as if not to hit someone, and did not see the obstacle. I made it a rule to park to the curb only in reverse. You can't drive close to curbs, most likely the skirt will be torn off. It's good that it's black. According to the owners, the car is very good for family trips to the sea and other trips on public roads, but small ground clearance and large overhangs mar every exit from the asphalt. And if the issues of ground clearance and suspension piercing in most cases can be solved by installing auto bumpers or spacers, then overhangs will not be defeated. In a word, owners of Kia Cee'd, be vigilant. Bumps, potholes, curbs and other potholes are not dormant. Reduce speed on uneven roads, park in reverse and turn on your head. Undoubtedly, Kia Cee'd II can be considered quite a roomy and practical car. In reviews of owners it is possible to find a lot of confirmations, even when we speak about hatchbacks with not the biggest trunk. With volume of 380 litres, trunk for 3 people, more than, except the size there are hooks for packages, elimination, there would be a fairy tale in general. The salon feels more spacious than it is. In all doors there are convenient niches in which 1.5-litre bottle with water enters, and still there is a place for other trifles. The trunk of a hatchback turns out to be more convenient on height of loading. It is much easier to get and put things than in sedans. We went to my mother-in-law for a month. A ton of junk was accommodated. There is enough room in the cabin for us with an average height. Well, and if to fold a back row of seats, then, as owners write in the reviews, at least refrigerator to transport. One of the authors boasts that 3 flights carried a 1-room apartment, another, that without problems took away a metal cabinet 168 by 75 by 50 centimeters. But even in the 5-seat configuration, in the trunk of the hatch without problems fits a set of 4 wheels on 16 inches or a folded baby stroller with a couple of bags. What to say about the Cee'd SW station wagon? 2 doors from Leroy to the house, very roomy. We can take the refrigerator in it from the store, and the stove, everything fits. You get great savings on delivery from the store. Especially owners like the fact that when folding the rear row gets a space with a flat floor. And the size quite allows to organize in the car a full-fledged sleeping place. The trunk is unrealistically huge. You can make a flat floor and sleep, and also it is convenient to sit in it. Using the trunk lid as a canopy, you can go on a trip to the countryside with friends, and the trunk with the cabin to use as a tent. 2 people freely fit, and there is enough room. On the road hotel was not used, slept in 3 in the trunk. The body of the Universal, just a fairy tale. The rear row fold into a flat, without bumps, without any reservations, flat floor. Stelly sleeping bag and sleep. It is not accidental that Cee'd SW accounted for more than a half of the total sales volume. This automobile will suit both a solid family man with 2 children of senior school age and young generation, as it looks even better than hatch, and an individual businessman who needs to carry small batches of goods. In at least 8 out of 10 reviews, the authors mention insufficient noise insulation as the main disadvantage of the Kia Cee'd. Noise in the cabin is criticized even more often than the lack of ground clearance and low cross-country ability. Someone, certainly, expresses quite carefully, noisy at high speeds, especially in winter on studs. From minuses I would note noise Insulation, in particular, noise from wheel arches and road is more appreciable than in Focus. Noise insulation is a bit weak, but quite tolerable. From minuses only noise, it could be better. But there are also those who literally chop with the shoulder. Noise is just terrible. When driving 110 km/h you can't hear your interlocutor on the passenger seat. You have to shout, and don't even try to tell jokes to the passenger behind, he won't hear them. The only minus is noise insulation of wheel arches. It is as if there is no noise at all. The main minus is noise. There is no noise at all. It is quite clear how to deal with it. Everything is solved by installing additional noise insulation. The result is also clear. I had 4 doors soundproofed. It turned out to be quite enough. Noise isolation of the arches, additionally installed in the car dealership, made traveling even more comfortable. It is clear that someone puts up with noise, believing that it is enough to add the volume of acoustic system sound. By the way, Kia Cee'd gives out quite decent sound, but very many people prefer to spend some money and solve the problem cardinally well. And those who are looking for a car on the secondary market, there is a good chance to find a copy with already installed additional noise insulation. Well, the main advantage of Kia Cee'd II owners certainly consider the highest reliability of this car. The number of reviews in which the authors write that for 2 to 5 years of operation they have never faced the need for any serious repair. Limited only to scheduled maintenance, simply cannot be counted, and, on the contrary, there are no reviews with mournful lists of breakdowns and calculation of costs for their repair. Koreans really do things. The car is a fire. We went on a long-distance trip to the Crimea, like in one breath. For the whole run I changed one bulb. Before that I was scared of problems with the catalytic converter, but all these are bikes for the naive. Pour normal gasoline, and you will be happy. I have never visited the repair. There was no need. Terrific reliability. 3 years of operation and more than 80,000 kilometers and only consumables. On the previous car I changed for the same period of time the stabilizer arm, left hub assembly, wiper mechanism assembly, the most reliable car of all that I had. At the moment the mileage is 127,400 kilometers. There were no serious breakdowns. I changed only oil and consumables. I owned several brands before him: Opel, Audi, Mercedes, Chevrolet, and, surprisingly, this Korean for such a mileage less than all the SO brands. Koreans have achieved a quality that is not inferior to the Germans and Japanese. Such statements can be quoted literally endlessly. Or here is such a very revealing story. I bought it with 273,000 kilometers of mileage in a taxi park. Working the next year in cab mode, I drove another 100,000 kilometers. There were no problems with this car at all. At the mileage of 365,000 kilometers, I shook the running gear, and the service said that the running gear was factory. 365,000 kilometers on the original chassis is just great. Against this background, stories about CDS with mileage of 500 to 600,000, which worked like clockwork, are not perceived as Uncle Remus fairy tales and Farriatives fantasies. That's why it is quite worth listening to those who say that it is quite real to find a used Cee'd 2017 with a mileage of about 80,000 kilometers with a single owner at a price of about 800,000 rubles, and that such a car without any serious breakdowns runs for another 5 years. The car is really reliable, and I think that the next owner of my Kia will drive it just as trouble-free for the next 60,000 kilometers. As we have already said, such reliability leads to the fact that the car with age loses price much slower than its classmates. From the seller's point of view, of course, it is good, but from the buyer's point of view, not so good. But here everyone decides for himself what is better, to spend on the initial purchase and count on several years of quiet life, or to save money, but then regularly invest in installments in current repairs. In conclusion, the Kia Cee'd II JD presents a compelling case for both buyers and skeptics alike. On one hand, its impressive reliability, stylish design, and strong value for money make it an attractive option for many. On the other hand, potential drawbacks such as limited engine options and a somewhat cramped rear space may deter some buyers. Ultimately, whether to invest in this vehicle depends on your personal priorities and preferences. Weighing these 5 reasons will help you make an informed decision that aligns with your needs. Thank you for watching, and we hope this guide has been helpful in your car buying journey.